message. So you would think that they would understand this message. And yet, they are going to run into a really big problem here. Because they look out and they see a problem. And that problem is there are 5,000 men. If you read the other gospel accounts, it says at least 5,000 men, plus women and children. So who knows how many thousands of people were actually there that day. Jesus is speaking to them about their physical needs, and all the disciples can see, Jesus is talking about their spiritual needs, and all the disciples can see is the physical needs that are about to happen. How many of you have ever had guests over at your house and you were having a great time and everything was going well, and then all of a sudden you started thinking, it's getting to be dinner time. I haven't gone grocery shopping in 3 days. What are we going to do about this? Right? So, it happens. The disciples are thinking the same thing. They look around, they see all these people, and they say, whoa, what are we going to do about this? So they go to Jesus and say, let's send them away. Best thing for them, let's take care of them. You've been taking care of them already. Let's go ahead and take care of them. Let's send them away. And Jesus gives them their 911. Okay? Here's their spiritual problem right here. He said to them, you give them something to eat. I don't know about you guys, but I couldn't even imagine. Chad just asked the kids, who would take care of this. And he asked about 5,000. I'll go lower than that. I'll ask one of you to stand up here and go, okay, I'll feed all of you guys right here today. Right? How many of us are signing up for that? Okay, so we got a couple kids still signing up for it, just so you guys know. I want us to seriously think about one thing. I know the disciples feel overwhelmed with this, all right? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But here's the thing I want you to think about today. Did Jesus ask them something he didn't think they could do? I want you to think about that. All right, think about that. And think about what they had just been doing. They had just gone out, and they had just spread the word of God, and they were doing miracles and healing people already. Did Jesus actually ask them to do something they couldn't have done? You see, immediately after all that spiritual high of being out there and doing the wonderful work of God, they somehow forgot the power that Jesus had already given them. And so I don't think, and we'll get back to this, but I don't think Jesus actually asked them to do something they could not have handled themselves. But here's the thing. We ask ourselves to do things. We ask each of you to do things, serving all the time. The problem is, the very first thing that happens is this. Oh, or that. How about that? We get overwhelmed. We get overwhelmed. I mean, can you even imagine some of the things that are going through the disciples' head at that point? They're looking out at this crowd. Jesus says to feed them, and they've got 5 loaves and 2 fish. I don't know about you, but I'm going, hey, James, you should take care of it. You should take the lead on this one, right? Right? Or just kind of passing the buck right down the line. This is something that seems overwhelming. And I'm going to tell you right now, most ministry seems overwhelming. It should. You are doing the work of God. It should be overwhelming. Every one of our deacons who does a job here, they should be overwhelmed in the thinking of what they are responsible for. I don't discount that at all. I believe you should. I think you should. And that's the way the disciples are feeling right now. They're feeling it's too much. It's too much. It's an overwhelming idea that we are instruments of God. Think about trying to tell someone who isn't a believer that right there. By the way, you're sitting and getting a drink at the water cooler at work, and you say, hey, by the way, what are you doing this weekend? Well, I'm an instrument of God. What reaction would that get for you? Not so much, huh? But you are. Every single one of us are an instrument for God. That is who we are. As Christians, we are God's instrument here on earth. We are God's workers here on earth. And if that thought all by itself isn't overwhelming enough, think about the tasks that we have to do. I want you to think about the idea of evangelizing the world. Jesus tells his disciples in Matthew 28, Mark 16, he tells them, go out, where? To Galilee, to Samaria. Hey, go down to Egypt. Hey, maybe go up towards Mesopotamia. No, he says, go out to all the world. Wow. What am I going to do next week? Right? It's overwhelming. Even the littlest task can become overwhelming. We were talking in Bible class today about a simple task, communion. We share communion every week, which the Bible tells us to. I mean, we do it every single week. It takes 4 guys to do it for us. And I know there's some of you out there that have been in little congregations and you've done it by yourself, right? Why don't you think about a congregation like one that I've been to, Memorial Road in Oklahoma City. There were 45 guys that had to serve communion to that congregation. Now, if I came up to you, if you were a new member, let's just use that. You're a new member at Memorial Road, and I came up to you and said, hey, Luke, glad you're here. Glad you placed membership this week. You're in charge of communion next week. That'd be a little overwhelming, okay, as you look at it and you see the task that is at hand. You know, and so something even simple can become overwhelming. Brian's our deacon of worship, and I can't even imagine. I mean, you know, Carrie and I get sermons ready, and we study for them for hours and get them ready to present to you. But Brian's task is actually to get your minds and hearts prepared for that. Anybody want to volunteer for his job? I don't. And I'm preaching up here. Listen, every little part of serving can become overwhelming. I say all that to say this, but it doesn't have to. It should be overwhelming the fact that you're serving God, yes, but the task itself should never become overwhelming, and there's some reasons why I say that. Over and over again, the disciples have learned that Jesus provides. Constantly, they've been reminded of this. You know, and I brought up this verse here, and he said to them, why are you afraid? You've little faith. Then he rose and rebuked the wind and the sea. You remember this whole thing that was going on? Jesus was sleeping in the boat. And the disciples were afraid they were going to die. I'm going to say that again. Jesus was with them physically in the boat. They still thought they were going to die. I think they've forgotten all of the constant reminders that God has given us. So here's a few that we're going to talk about today. So the first one I want you to realize is that we need to remember who is in control. When we go to serve, we need to understand that we're serving God, okay? And we need to understand that God has chosen us and gifted us with talents in order to serve. But I want you to make sure that we understand right off the bat, we are not in control. We are never in control. God is the one who has the control over this. So when we go to serve, we need to understand that we're doing God's work. Simply put, it's just not about you. It's not about me. It's not about you. The disciples, as they were trying to look out at all those people, and Jesus says, hey, you feed them. All of a sudden, it became all about them. Right? But it wasn't. It never was. And so when we start to feel overwhelmed about serving, the first thing I want you to back up and say to yourself is, I am not the one in control. And I don't care what kind of serving that you are doing. Whatever you are doing to serve God, you need to back up and remember God is in control. The disciples forgot this. And again, I just want to say this. I'm not sure that Jesus would have ever asked them to do something that they couldn't do. The next one I want you to remember is sometimes it just takes one step at a time. One step at a time. One step at a time. My granddaughter is about to turn 1, and she is just on the edge of walking, right? Just on the edge of walking. And so we've seen that one step, right? But we haven't seen multiple steps yet. Unless it happened last night. Did it happen last night? No? No, okay. Good. So, we're waiting for those multiple steps, right? But it's still one step at a time. One step at a time. And so we need to remember, as we are serving, it's one step at a time. Don't look at the big picture. Remember who's in control, but don't look at the big picture of what the whole task is. You need to break it down. You need to break it down into steps that you can handle. Steps that you are okay with. Even the disciples had this test run. I call it a test run. He sent them out to heal the sick, to speak the words of God, right? In verses 1 and 2 of Luke 9, they had this test run, and yet they're still forgetting. But one little step at a time. I think even Jesus takes that philosophy in this chapter. In the reading we just had, in the latter part of the reading, he actually says, okay, go ahead, let them go sit down in groups of 50. He's taking one step at a time. He didn't look at the whole group. He broke them down. All right? And so even in our serving, I think we need to take it one step at a time. What can I do right now? The next thing I want you to remember is it takes time. It takes time. It takes time in two ways, okay? It takes time in two ways. The first way I want you to know is it takes time to learn to serve. We talked last week about having compassion to serve, okay? So learning to have compassion, and also learning that you need to, in the way you're going to serve, learning about your talents, learning about the gifts that God has blessed you with, learning how to use them. Those things all take time. That's okay. That's okay. This, I believe, is from the middle towards the end of Jesus' ministry. So these disciples have been with Jesus for quite a long time, maybe up to 2 years. They've been with Jesus for up to 2 years, and so they've had those times. Jesus didn't ask them on the very first day, hey, you want to follow me? Come and follow me. And they go, oh, yeah, great. And then he says, oh, by the way, here's 5,000 people, feed them. It didn't happen that way. He's taught them. And so as we take one step at a time, it also takes time to learn and to grow. Paul addressed this when he writes to the Corinthians in chapter 3. He writes, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. Again, going back to that whole I'm not in control thing. But we need to realize that sometimes when we serve, and even though we break it down into steps, and it's going to take time, sometimes it's going to take time, and you're not going to be the one to finish it. I'm going to tell you, I have all sorts of issues with that. I really do. Do any of you? I mean, how many of you like to be in control of situations, right? If you're going to start a project, don't you want to finish it? All right, I know your wives, I know some of you, your wives are nudging you going, yeah, finish projects, remember? If I was close enough to my wife right now, she'd be doing the same thing. All right, but the problem is I want to see things come to fruition. I want to see them happen. If I'm going to put the work into it, I want to see it happen. But Paul reminds us in Corinthians here that, listen, it's not about you. Serving God is about just that, serving God. And so if we're going to serve God, it's going to take time. Now, in the other way it takes time is that it takes your personal time. That's a struggle. I feel like it's more a struggle today than it's ever been. Our cultures have changed, and we're less about people than we were in the past. And I'm not going to blame anything, or I'm not going to talk about why I think it is or anything about that. What I want to talk about is, how do we fix that? Because in the past, our culture was more about people. I mean, how many of you older people, more mature people, remember sitting on the front porch and talking to neighbors or talking to people walking by? Anybody? A few of them? Yeah? I do. It's hard to remember that far back, but there was a time when our neighbors were our best friends, right? Our neighbors, the idea of going and borrowing a couple eggs or a cup of sugar was a real thing, right? How many of you right now would not even consider going to your neighbors for a cup of sugar? Right? Why? Because we've become so self-dependent on the grocery store, the convenience stores right down the line. Again, but we're not people-oriented. So I put this in here because that takes time. Developing relationships takes time. Serving people takes time. And so it takes time out of our schedules to do that. Think about all the places you have gone this week. All the places you were required to go this week because of your responsibilities, because of your kids, or just because of your work, or it doesn't matter. All the different places you've had to go this week. Unless you're on vacation, then it probably has been a very, very busy schedule. Where was serving God in that schedule? I'm not trying to ask you that to shame you or anything like that. I want you to honestly look at your own schedules and think about, where is my serving God? Where is my using of my talents? Where have I taken the time to actually do that? Or have I taken the easy way out? Right? The easy way out. Sometimes there's an easy way to get over it or get through it. And sometimes that's what we like to take, instead of taking the time to do what is often. Nothing heals overnight, going back to the idea of broken bones. See, I think serving is becoming a broken bone in the church. I really do. Because of the fact that we deem our lives so busy, we're not finding the time to serve others, to be a part of others' lives. And so I want us to all consider that today. I want us to consider the fact that nothing heals overnight, so it's going to take time to get back to that. Nothing heals overnight. We've got some doctors and nurses in here, and they could probably tell you that, listen, a broken bone's not going to heal overnight. All right? Especially if it's sticking out this way. No, never mind. It's not going to heal overnight. Even go simple. A cough. Listen, how many of our kids we've had a cough for a couple months now, right? We're not sick anymore, but we got a cough, and it just hangs on. Nothing heals overnight. So taking time to serve, I think, takes time. It takes a lot of time. Learning to serve and learning to take that time is something we have to do in our lives. The church, God's message was brought about simply by 12 guys being brought together by God, by Jesus himself, and sending them out to be involved in people's lives. Again, Paul wrote, I planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the growth. Somebody planted and somebody watered. At least 2 people served. So we need to have people that are going to serve. This is the other part, so that we're not overwhelmed. This is the last one, actually. You're not alone. You're not alone. How many people have ever started a major project and felt like they were alone? That nobody else was coming, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. Matt is on the board for Camp Hunt, and so I'm picking on him. Brian, who's sitting next to him, so that just works out for my vision today. Matt's on the board at camp, and his job is to open and close camp. And I want to tell you that is the most thankful job. I mean, people are just lining up to help. I'm lying. I'm just lying. It is the most thankless job at camp. It really is. And he will tell you, he'll be straight up with you and tell you that there have been years that he was out there all by himself. Many years. No one out there helping him. I want you to think about that for a second. This is a place where we send all of our children. This is a place that we are all invested in. And the only one who can show up to open it up is Matt. Do you think there might be a broken problem? Or do you think maybe serving is broken somewhere along the line? Now, I realize that's not everybody's talent, but I'm just using that for one instance. We need to make sure that we understand we're not alone. We're not alone. If anything, I think Matt would agree with this. If anything, he knew that God was with him. He wished God was a plumber, but he wished God was with him. But we need to realize when we go to serve that no matter how big the task, no matter how overwhelming it seems to be, you are not alone. And I hope as a church, as a family, we can get together and realize that we are not alone in the task that God has given us. In our area here, to spread the gospel, to do the things that we do, to teach the children, to preach the message, to organize the service here, to do all the things that God has asked us to do. We are not alone. We have been brought together by God to do just that. And so I'm going to tell you, we need to rise up. Rise up and serve daily. We need to rise up at least daily thinking about how we are serving God. If you don't know a reason or know a way to serve, we can help you with that. We can tell you all the different ways that you can serve here in this congregation. But it won't be alone. Because we're all in this together. I think the disciples missed a little portion of that. Don't just focus on the physical. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I have in the past, seen a broken bone, okay? Actually, it was at a teen lock-in, of course, right? Because you break bones at teen lock-ins. For a while in Clifton Park, we were known as don't have a teen lock-in because somebody broke a bone every lock-in. But we were playing two-hand touch football in the auditorium. I know. And kid fell on his wrist, and it stuck out this way and went back that way. It was definitely broken. And when you see that broken bone, the first thing you think of is, wow, this is terrible. This is awful, and there's nothing I can do about this. Right? And you panic. We should never panic serving God. Never panic. God is with you. God is with us today. And He is here to let us know that He has a job for us to do, and it's a job that He wants us to do. He wants us to serve. He started out with 12, and He's multiplied that over and over and over again. So the world should be serving God more than any other time in history. but not if it's broken. So today, let's heal. Let's heal and let's move on and let's serve God in a way that gives glory to Him every single day of our lives. That's what it's all about. That's my 911 for this morning. If you have any problems or struggles that you have a need for this morning, we are here for you. The elders and everyone else are here specifically to help you through whatever struggles you're having. I don't think it's an accident that you were brought here this morning. So if you have anything you need, please come as we've been singing the song that's been selected.